98 Not Out, sponsored by Shepherd Neame, proud supporters of cricket in Essex.
Mark Butcher is our guest in the studio this evening.
The girl's voice that you can hear on there is Alita, who's my eldest daughter. And we were messing around with that at home. I'd sort of demoed the track and sort of said, "Oh, why don't you come in and just handed her the vocal. Go on, have a go, just sing the tune." She heard it twice and she just sang it. And I sneakily pressed the record button while she was doing it. And she went home, and I sort of sat in the office until God knows what time of the night, sort of messing around with my vocal take for the demo and hers, and kind of thought, hang on a second, this works without us trying. And so that was it. She begged me to let her do it again. She said, "Oh, I don't like it. It's not good enough." And I'm like, "No, that's the one. That's the take."
You've got a real decent bunch of people around you, haven't you?
Yeah, it's real. Well, they have to be. They make me sound good. And Pete Twyman, who produced and played bass on the track, and the rest of it's me and Leeds.
Who's the chap from Incognito that you've got?
That's a guy called Matt Cooper, who is has been the musical director and keyboard player. He's an absolute genius from Incognito. I don't know how long he's been with the band now. Probably at least from 2000. I met him around about 2003. Myself and my girlfriend then, now my wife, went to a gig 2004, something like that. I have to get the dates right. That's tricky. 2004.
Make sure you get it right.
2004. We went to a gig, and I went outside. I think they just brought in the no smoking thing, and I was still smoking then. I smoked while I was playing and quit almost immediately after.
Have you stopped now?
Yeah, I'm not since about 2004-05. But I smoked all the way through my England career.
I remember Bob Willis telling you off for it.
Don't do it, kids. But yeah. So I went outside for a cigarette, and one of the band sort of appeared outside, recognised him because he still had his shades on. And he goes, "You're that cricket player, aren't you?" Turns out he's an absolute cricket badger, Matt. And that was it. We were friends ever since.
Oh, really?
So there's a track on the album which is co-written by him. Yeah.
The music thing, has it been, all the way through your life? Did it go back to you being a youngster, being sort of playing and interested in music?
Yeah, pretty much. I got my first guitar at sort of age 11 or 12. Mum sort of stumped up for a knockoff Telecaster copy or something for back in those days. But I'd always sort of been a singer really before then, so I had no musical training as such, but had always sort of performed as a vocalist. And then sort of the guitar playing sort of caught up, and I sort of started writing songs about 14, 15, and had been in bands pretty much since I was 17 years old. So they kind of ran parallel-ish. The cricket obviously took precedent, which was absolutely right. I mean, it's the only thing I ever imagined I would do was be a cricket player. The sort of the music side of things was always a hobby until much later.
I mean, the cricket career, what was it? Surrey, England, Ashes, hundreds. I mean,
Not bad.
Does the life of a cricketer kind of go hand in hand with the music? Because particularly at the level that you played, and for the length of time you played at that level, there's a lot of time sat in hotel rooms or on buses or on aeroplanes. Does that give you the time and the kind of mental space to be writing songs or coming up with tunes?
It does a bit. I mean, perhaps more so now than it did when I was playing. Again, on tours, they're kind of, even though you have quite a bit of downtime, they're kind of pressurised things. You're generally even thinking about the game that's gone or the one that's coming. And so even on the plane journeys or in hotel times, it's very difficult to remove yourself completely from what you're there for.
Yeah.
So I'd take a guitar along to relax, as opposed to sort of actually doing anything constructive. But nowadays, so many sort of bits of songs or lyrics or whatever come to me while I'm travelling, sort of travelling around the world doing the commentary stuff, because the brain is kind of a little bit more open than perhaps it was when I was playing. And you find that with professional sports people are, as much as some of them seem as though they're completely and utterly engaged in being, in the sport and complete badgers. Cookie's a great example of somebody who you would imagine is 100% focused almost all of the time on being a batsman. There are people like that, but there are also other guys who seem much less engaged. But the brain is always turning that
Yeah.
over too, you know. So there isn't an enormous amount of space to do other things whilst you're in the midst of a career.
Well, in the commentary box, I mean, there's a few of you. I mean, there's you, obviously, which I think is probably the most successful, but the multi-talented, award-winning Ebony Rainford-Brent
Yes.
doesn't mind to go on the drums.
No, Ebs is she's only just taking it up really as well. But she's got the old electric kit at home, and she's been sort of studying, and she's a very, very talented girl at pretty much everything. She's got the keys to the City of London now.
Yeah?
I mean, you don't need them. No, there's nobody in. You just
open.
There's nobody home.
We had her on the show, and I did a bit of research. I mean, she's got a master's in biochemistry or something.
Yeah.
I mean, she was obviously a fantastic cricketer. Isha Guhar's sort of, her and her are kind of neck and neck on terms of cricketing career and academic careers.
Yeah. I mean, the girls are kind of, I wouldn't say taking over, but they're really
Breathing down your neck.
really coming on strong. Well, and in many cases, they're a long way ahead of us. You know, there's two different things. I think there was a bit of a row that sort of broke out at the back end or during the winter. Something that surprise, Jeffrey Boycott said something controversial. You know, but the difference between what say Isha Guha does on Test Match Special as a ball-by-ball commentator, as opposed to what Jeffrey does as a summariser, they're not the same job. You know, so people saying that Jeffrey Boycott has been replaced by Isha Guha, well, number one, not true, and number two, if that had been the case, then there is nothing, given the roles that the two of them play, that mean that one was in place of the other. That's a completely separate issue. But Ebony, the stuff this year with Michael Holding around sort of the George Floyd, the Black Lives Matter thing was unbelievably powerful telly, and I suppose again sort of going back to that no regrets thing. If we hadn't have had this bizarre year, we wouldn't have had an hour or 2 hours of that at the beginning of the season to sort of kick the whole thing off, which was some of the most powerful stuff I've seen on the TV.
That was incredible, that morning of cricket. I mean, there was so much, because it was the first cricket that we'd seen all year.
Oh, yeah.
And this big thing of the West Indies coming over and taking the not inconsiderable risk of making the trip. And all the measures and everything. So it had enough emotion behind the event anyway. For then the whole thing with the West Indies, of all people, being there, with all the social events that were going on, for that, and that morning of cricket,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it rained, didn't it? I mean, that was the thing. It had we not had the 2 hour rain delay on day one of the Test match, none of that stuff would have happened. The piece had been filmed with Mikey and Ebony. And that would have gone out either at lunchtime or at the start of play. I can't remember how it was scheduled. And then, of course, you had this 2 hours with no cricket. They had they didn't have anything else to play in. You couldn't do player interviews. All of that kind of stuff was out the window. So the conversation continued, and sort of Mikey was unbelievable that day. And I got a call from Mark Austin, who now does the Sky News anchor, who's been ITV News, whatever.
That's right, yeah.
Proper news journalist called me and said, would you come on the show and talk about what happened there today? And I sort of said, well, why the hell do you want me? Why don't you try and get in contact with
Jeffrey was busy, wasn't
with the man himself?
Yeah.
It's, because all I'd be doing was trying to articulate the strength of feeling that Mikey had. I've got my own tales, but it was nothing compared to what came out that day.
Unbelievable. And when you think with someone like Mikey, who was around when all the Rebel tours were going on, and West Indian cricket and what West Indian players had to put up with back in the sort of 70s and 80s, it was almost like the whole thing just came flooding out of him.
Yeah. I think beyond the cricket side of things, people sort of talking about it as though it's cricket is this separate bubble from society. I mean, I know that from Mikey's point of view, a lot of that was built up around the feelings that he had of that were inexplicable towards things that had happened to his parents. It was put it this way, it was an extraordinary. We don't perhaps need to go over the ground, but it was an incredible sort of morning of broadcasting more than anything else. He has just kind of been part of the radio show that has been in my head or throughout my life, really. From the Jam in 77, I was five years old. Going Underground would have been number one in 1979 or 1980 or something. So around about the time I started buying records. The Style Council have just had they've just released this sort of 3-album or 3 LP retrospective of their career. And beyond the sort of that Long Hot Summer and the stuff that you hear on the radio still to this day, I was kind of listening to that reminded me that I was more of a fan of them than I ever realised. And I've been a huge fan of Paul's ever since the first solo album. So he's even without realising it, it's kind of a sort of a musical hero to me. And I managed to meet him once. It's very short,
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Guy called Andy Lewis, who producer, brilliant bass player. He was in Weller's band at the time. So he said, come on, we'll go down to Chiswick. He's playing at the Town Hall. We're trying out a few new tracks for a tour. I can't remember what year it was 2017 or something. I'll introduce you to him. And so after the show, sort of went backstage, he's sweaty, got his towel wrapped around his neck, and Andy comes over and goes, oh, this is the guy I was telling you about. He goes, you're that cricket bloke, aren't you? Yes,
Oh, wow.
I am, Paul, yes.
Oh, wow.
That was the limit of the conversation, but that was all that was required. Really good family friend of mine is Maxi Jazz. He is my uncle's child. They've been mates since they were kids. He has got walls of guitars in his house, right? Absolutely, he's a blues guitar playing nut. But the music he makes with Faithless are, it's very, very electronic.
Yeah.
Very sort of, it's dance orientated, very, very modern. And yet, now knowing him as I do, I can listen to that and kind of hear the blues in it. Cricketing formats or whatever, T20. Some people still very sniffy about that. 18 years on from the first time it was seen, and others are thinking, well, T20 is getting a little bit dull. We need to make it 100 balls, or we need to have 10 overs, whatever it might be. But the game is still the game. Guys are still bowling and batting. They're doing it over a short period of time, but the notes are the notes, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
There are only however many of them there are. I've over the year I've advocated for sort of fewer teams in a T20 league in the UK, in order to try and concentrate talent. That didn't mean that there would be no, that the 18 counties would not play T20 cricket in any way, shape or form. It just meant that if you it would be a graded thing where you'd have the sort of elite, the elite competition that sort of generates money and more clicks and more advertising and all that other kind of stuff. I'm not entirely sure that a different 5 ball overs. If you're talking about trying to attract new people to the game of cricket, I would vouch that pretty much one of the things that nearly everybody knows about the game of cricket is there's 6 balls in an over, and that's the one thing that's disappeared. We are where we are. The 100 is coming regardless of whether you want it or not. I would still like to have seen the existing T20, the Blast, with all of the 18 counties. I'd like to have seen that be conjoined to the new competition, i.e., that the counties play that in a much smaller format. Maybe you add Ireland and Scotland to make 20. Then you have 4 groups of 5. You play out the group stages. You have finals, whatever. You then do the auction at the back end of what's already happened. So that it's kind of right in front of you. Logistical problems with overseas players, I get it, all that type of thing. But I'd have made it so that one was kind of pertinent to the other. Whereas the way that things seem to have gone with the 100 is kind of like this: the 100 is now battling against the existing fan base, the existing sport, and I'm not sure that's viable.
We've got your CDs here. I mean, you get decent value for money on these, don't you? 13 songs on each, just under an hour on each.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those difficult things because, I still buy a lot of LPs. I even started to restock the vinyl cupboard now at home. Got a magnificent new turntable from the missus for. It wasn't a significant birthday, but they're all significant once you get past Darren's age.
Of animal.
So And one of the things that always sort of strikes me about sort of records, or the records that I used to love when I was a kid, was that the running time, it needed to fit on one side of a C90. Right?
Oh yeah,
And we weren't supposed to do it. And we got all the arguments about streaming and all that kind of stuff. Don't do that. Buy the physical ones. So when sort of compiling the tracks, the songs for an album, you've always got more tunes, more stuff written, and more stuff recorded than makes the final cut. Is how many do you put on? You know, what's the ideal length? You know, particularly now that everybody is, well, I say everybody, that's tiring everybody with the wrong brush. But you know, the people's sort of attention for time, and it seems to be so much more diminished than it used to be. That people don't have the time to sit down and take in 45 minutes to an hour of an album. So it's kind of like, right, how can we want shortish songs. Can you get them into 45 minutes on the record? Failed miserably on both counts. But I mean, you know, the idea for the singles. So going back to the beginning of the show with Start Again, we released these two tracks in June and then another 2 in September, which were just digital only. So none of them are on physical stuff yet. And sort of the idea being that if you've got material, given that you can put things out on the internet now and not have to manufacture stuff, that you can keep a sort of steady stream of new stuff coming out, just to keep your eye in and keep people's ears ready for new things. And so if I'd have known that was something that we could have done when I was releasing Now Playing, we might have left a couple more tracks off and kept it down to 45 minutes. But you're right, value for money. One of the positive things about lockdown is that people have kind of found different ways of being able to do their jobs, perhaps. You know, not everybody is fortunate enough to be able to stay home and do things on a computer. I know that, but a lot of people whose lives seem to be spent either going to and from an office and being tied to a desk most of the time. You know, you can do other things. You listen to music. You've got time for your hobbies a little bit more. If you lose the necessity to be stuck in a traffic jam for 3 hours a day. So yeah.
When you come home from school, you're mad about your guitar, you're mad about your cricket. Which one do you pick up first?
Well, I used to get belted for playing cricket in the house. Because me and my brother, we used to have a very long hallway that ran all the way through from the kitchen down to the front door. It was kind of like this beautiful strip, so you get a bit of a run up in and bowl down towards the front door, and then sort of like be pinging tennis balls around. So that had to stop. So in the end, it became guitar, because we'd get licks if we were playing in the house. You know, the regulation, playing a cricket ball in the back garden. I think I bowled to my brother. It just stopped a little bit in the back, bit stodgy in the back garden. My brother's little check drive flew over my head through the kitchen window, patched up beautifully by my granddad, who's no longer with us. Very, very handy. Could build, turn his hand to anything. So he came round, sorted the window out. 2 or 3 nights later, the old man had a bit of a late one. Tried to crawl in through an open window in the kitchen, a small one through the window, got through it, stumbled on the worktop and fell back through the one that Grandad had fixed him up like 3 or 4 days before.
Now, in your day, was playing music a big thing? Was that sort of a...
Yeah, we'd always have music on in the dressing rooms. I mean, it became something that was regulation, sort of towards the back end of the 90s. So no, there was no music in the early days, and then it started to come out. Adam Hollyoake, when he became captain in 97, was very sort of keen for us all to be as chilled as possible. So there'd be tunes going on. So Chris Lewis was a member of the side back then.
Yeah.
He was big into his reggae and stuff.
Yeah. Guyanese heritage.
But it's a real tricky thing, for having music in dressing rooms. Some people don't like it at all. Some people would much prefer things to be quieter, so they could kind of get their thoughts together. Other people want it to be raucous the whole time, because thinking kind of scared the hell out of them. And then trying to choose something that everybody's happy to listen to is near on impossible. So it was generally best left up to Adam, because he just fight anybody who didn't agree, and he would win. So in the end, there was no argument at all. One of the best blokes. I'd known him. We first met when we were 10 years old, and both of us had a huge amount of hair, proper froze on both of us, and we kind of hit it off straight away. He was lightning quick bowler at sort of under 11, under 12, whatever, and I was sort of like the best batter around at the time in the Surrey school sort of network. So we got on straight away, and kind of our careers ran pretty much parallel right up until us. We were both picked in our first Test match squad to play against Australia in '97. I made the 11, and he was 12 man. And in the end, I'm not sure if we ever played a Test match together. We were often in the same squads, or in that series in '97 when he finally made his debut against Australia, which would have been at Trent Bridge. Him and Ben both played at Trent Bridge. I was left out, so I don't think we ever played a Test match together, which was a real shame. But one of my most cherished sort of artefacts of my England career is a photograph of Adam and myself stood up on top of the old pavilion, the gantry at Edgbaston. I think that the start of the first Test in '97 had been delayed slightly for rain, and so Adam and I went and found Bill Laurie and had a photograph taken with Bill up on top of the thing. And I've still got the picture. We both turned slightly profile because we'd always been, got stick for having big noses in the dressing room. So we thought we'd go and get Bill and we get a photograph of the two of us with Bill Laurie in the middle. He didn't know why, but we did, and I've still got that picture somewhere.
And that, breaking into the England team back then, so that was a sort of a transitional point in the England team in sort of early 90s. And I know Sky have done that documentary, England in the 90s, and it's quite a tale.
I wonder who came up with that idea.
Yeah.
That's that, and talk about sort of varied careers or different sort of ways of my career has branched off. I mean, that's one of the things I'm as proud of as anything. The two albums, the playing for England, all the rest of it. I went to Sky with the idea for England in the 90s. So look, everyone always says that it's the worst possible sporting era for a team. Let's explore it. Let's see if it was. I'm not sure that it was. I think the 80s was probably worse, as Athers says quite so eloquently at the beginning. Maybe that was a bad edit. Maybe we should have left him saying that till the end. But anyway, but that was my baby. I did all the research for the interviews, and we kind of, myself and a young producer called Alex Jackson, who sort of came up with certainly not his idea, but of doing it so that it was more like testimony than interview. So I sort of sat to the side of the camera and through people sort of introductions, I suppose, and just got them to tell the story down the lens so it feels sort of intimate, etc. And it was, I was absolutely loved doing it, loved the whole process of being involved in sort of co-producing something like that. And the end result was pretty great. You pick the music for the eras and all the rest of it. Yeah. The only problem with it is once the rights kind of got lost, Sky lost the rights to Aussie cricket. So with all the clips we had on there from Australia, from Ashes series over abroad, we kind of can't show it. Or Sky can't show it. I say we. Sky can't show it at the moment, so it's in mothballs. But it will be back. 98. So they had Clayton Lambert and Phil O'Wallace opening the batting for them.
Yeah.
There were two guys who kind of, would have loved T20 had they been around at the time, because they just stand there and just teed off. I remember Dean Headley bowling on the evening of, it must have been the evening of the day 4 in that Test match. Dino's got 3 slips of gully, long off and long on to Phil O'Wallace. I've never seen a field like it in Test match cricket before, but that was kind of bizarre. It was funny old days. And of course, at the end of that trip, we played 6 tests because the Sabina Park Test match got abandoned.
Oh yeah,
that stood, by the way. I got a first bauler in that game. The game got called off like 3 overs later, and the scorer came in. I wasn't supposed to be playing the Test match. We'd been in the West Indies. The days where the tours lasted, they were proper long.
Yeah.
So we were in Antigua in Jolly Harbour, all inclusive with the old wristbands on for a month before the first Test match. Completely bonkers. And there were no nets. So there were one or two practice matches. I wasn't in any of them. Just wasn't going to play. On the morning of the Test match, Jack Russell went down with a stomach complaint. Always was smart, was Jack. Anyway, so 5 minutes before the toss, Stewie comes over to me and says, "Butch, you're playing, and we want you to bat 3. Is that all right?" And I just looked at him like, "What? Okay, all right then."
As you do.
No problem. I mean, what's the worst that could happen? This could be great. I've had no time to sort of have sleepless nights about Curtly and Courtney because I had no idea that I was going to play. And it was literally my first ball, the first ball I'd faced from a bowler on tour. And we'd been there a month. And it...
Who was it? Who was your bowler?
Look it up on YouTube. It's kind of... Courtney hasn't even run in. Not even running in. And he literally bowls his ball back of length. I just shuffle onto the back foot and the thing just flies at me. And I got the top of the handle had a red cherry on. You know where it says SH on the top of your handle?
Yeah.
Red cherry right there. Because I just managed to catch it before it hit me straight in the nose and it went straight up in the air. Cool. I got back in the dressing room to find my county captain and best mate in the game, Adam Hollyoake, absolutely peeing himself. I walked out to bat first over, I think, at number 3, and Fidel runs in, and he was rapid in those days, proper quick with that ridiculous low arm.
Yeah.
And he lets go of this ball, and I think the only time really in my career where I actually just turned my head away, because I had no idea where it had come from. I just turned my head away and waited for the clang. And he pitched the bloody thing up, the idiot, and it hit me on the wrist and dropped sort of just down in front of my stumps. I was like, "Whoa, okay, you got to wake up now. This could be really, really bad."
Pay attention.
And so Nasser and I don't know, we put on 150 or something for the 3rd wicket, in between rainstorms and going on and off for rain and bad light and all that kind of stuff. And I got 60, but I swear it was worth, in my mind, it was worth about 200. That I never ever had so many bruises and would never felt so beaten coming off the field as that little knock out there. So you're right, it wasn't Ambrose and Walsh, but going in between the rain showers, and they kept having a rest, so they didn't ever end the spell.
Yeah.
Tino and Fidel on that pitch at Sabina Park was the most torrid I think I ever had it in my career. It was quite something. John used to have this incredible night on Monday nights. It was the only place that was open in the West End on a Monday evening, or the only legal place anyway. It was Monday night in the West End called the Ten Room. Yeah. And he would have, that Prince would pop in and get up on stage and play with the house band. Were absolutely incredible. John was kind of musical director or whatever it was. It was an unbelievable night. Shaka Khan used to have, Lionel Richie came in.
So Amy Winehouse was.
Yeah, Amy White. Yeah, I mean that's one of the more famous sort of occasions. So it was this Monday night. All of the musos that were in town doing their shows in London would go along and get up and perform. And the night or the day of my second Test match 100 at Headingley, a slightly more famous one, we ended up back. It was Monday night. They wouldn't check us back in at the hotel in Leeds because we checked out that morning to celebrate the win, which they were few and far between against Australia, as everybody knows. So we drove very, very quickly from Headingley back down to London and I ended up in the Ten Room, and I think I sang "Let's Get It On" with the house band.
Oh wow!
They couldn't find Prince that night, so they ended up with me.
What's 2020 been like for you, Mark?
Yeah, I sort of had conversations about going over and working on the Sri Lankan Premier League. Obviously, India, as we know, are in Australia as we speak, and I hosted a sort of show for Sony TV out there for the last time that India were down when they won for the first time in whatever it was 74 years. But there were tricky stuff with quarantine and. I've got a young daughter, 3.5 years old, sort of in time away from the wife. I just felt that this winter would be a time where you kind of just sit tight. I ended up during the course of last summer. There was a point where I just thought, I'm going to have to go back to working in Sainsbury's again here, because literally I went 3 months without a gig. I'm freelancer, kind of. The music and the TV and broadcasting, whatever it is, they're all sort of off off my own bat. I'm not contracted anywhere. Really.
Yeah.
And so the early part of the lockdown was kind of, it was cool. Like everybody, you're doing the old Joe Wicks thing in the morning. I think it's brilliant. I was in a terrible state, having spent most of the winter in South Africa, following England around with TalkSport, the radio. So two things with radio. Obviously, no one could see you. What sort of state you've rocked up in the next day. And, very, very cheap meat and red wine. I kind of got back from there in February, kind of, your size, Darren.
Wow.
Then went out.
He really did.
Then went to Pakistan. Sort of for the PSL, which was fantastic. We got treated unbelievably well over there, and then the whole thing got cut short. It was around about sort of the 12th of March, 13th of March, and of course I got landed back at Gatwick on the 16th, and everything got locked down the following Monday. So it was Monday the 16th. I got home. 23rd was lockdown. So brilliant. Nothing's open. You can't go out restaurants. The pubs aren't open. All that kind of stuff. You're at home. So I'm carrying Indy around in a backpack, and we're walking up hills and everything like that. So comes May, middle of May, early June, I'm in great nick, but I haven't got any money. It's all very well and good, feeling good, but you got to start earning a few quid. And then of course the West Indies came over and saved everybody's bacon really. The amount of money that the ECB and the broadcasters of all types, whether it be TV or radio, would have lost had there been no cricket this summer would have been astronomical. So and Sky asked if I would host the debate show. Obviously Bob Willis no longer with us, and Charles Coles had done that show brilliantly for all those years, and so it was kind of that they knew they were going to have to do it remotely. We weren't going to be able to go into the studio, and they asked me if I'd host it for the 6 Test matches, the England West Indies and the England Pakistan Test matches, and of course I said yes, and that was it. So and then the summer sort of it wasn't normal, but the work started to come back in again. So by the end of October the 4th, finals day. Yeah. We ended up going over to the Sunday. It was the first time the latest that England had played cricket since something like 1856 or something.
Yeah.
Gee, it was cold.
Yeah.
Edgbaston, cold, wet, and horrible. But terrific. What I couldn't believe, and one thing that I'd love to pay tribute to all of the players, the cricketers that flew over, and the English pros, was that you'd imagined, or I had imagined anyway, that after a month of playing in front of no crowds, with kind of like the lack of adrenaline or the lack of sort of occasion that brings with it, that the levels would drop off. That people would get bored and start to kind of not really take it as seriously as they might. But it didn't happen. It didn't happen at any point. Nothing that I saw or covered sort of gave me the impression that people weren't sort of just as committed as they would have been had things been normal, and that's extreme testament, I think, to the professionalism of the modern day players, because I can only sort of track it back to how perhaps we might have been back in the 90s or the early 2000s had a similar situation occurred. Sort of, the season not been a proper season, the championship not been a proper championship. I can imagine that there would have been a little bit of, well, you know what, this isn't that important. We'll go out and have a bit of a laugh and a giggle and whatever. But that certainly didn't seem to be the case. And that might have had something to do with the fact that they couldn't go anywhere either. It wasn't like the boosters were open or something. But you know what I mean? It was worth watching, is what I'm saying. And very well done to everybody for getting it on and for doing it so well.
We've all become experts at Zoom, all of us, this year, having never ever done it before. Hosting the debate under that format, did that present any challenges?
Yeah, all of them. Every challenge you can imagine. I mean, the most difficult thing, and it's not Zoom. We actually had a producer and a director, all of them at their own individual homes. So director's got this little box of tricks, so he can choose shots. Either whether it's a single of me or the full guest together or whatever it might be. A producer who's on the other line, I've got them in through a set of AirPods. I mean, it's kind of just mind-boggling how the whole thing worked and kind of looked passable on the TV, I'm told. So the main difficulty really is as we sit here doing the show, I can look both of you in the eye, and you get cues from, just from the eye contact, or nodding along in agreement, or shaking your head like you're talking nonsense again, Mutu, shut up. That sort of thing. But you can't do that on the computer. You can't, So I've done enough of the debate shows or the verdict shows with Charles and Bob over the years, whereby you'd be sat there and commercial breaks coming up, for example, or something else has happened and there's a bit of breaking news and that comes in, or Charles has just given you a boot under the table as if to say, shut up, something else is going on, I need to talk now, type thing. All of those types of cues and things that you can do in a TV studio when you're all there are gone. So we had to sort of have various sort of techniques of people sticking hands up or waving, or the real trick was to get the shot of the three guests up on screen more often than not. So even if they weren't talking, they'd be up, and that would be so that I could see them and see how they were reacting to what was being said, and then I could hit them. Otherwise you're doing the whole thing blind, and the whole thing doesn't flow as well as possible. I mean, I'm sure in all sorts of other shows that they did the same or discovered a similar thing as they went along, but it was very much you were making it up on the hoof.
You did the I can't remember what they were called, but where you had the World Cup squad watching it back and commentating back over their own.
Well, Keezy hosted most of those. I mean, Rob and Nasser have become a fabulous sort of remote double act over the course of the summer. Doing all these types of things, and that's a brilliant idea. Again, other sports had done it. I don't know, it was Gary Neville. I think seeing it first, sort of sitting with, I can't remember, maybe Steven Gerrard or someone sitting there and talking through Man United Liverpool contests over the years and whatever. It's a brilliant concept, isn't it? How often do you get to sit there? Well, never is the answer. And because most of the time these guys don't remember this stuff, or they've seen bits of it, but they can't, and they're looking back, and Ben Stokes is going, oh, crikey, I don't remember it. In my mind, it didn't happen like that, And then they're able to, their memory gets jogged, and they're able to sort of to walk you through the feeling of Headingley or whatever it might be, or the World Cup. And so that's incredible insight. And again, that's a case of the broadcasters and the players coming together to try to give fans of the sport, fans of cricket who were being starved of it at the time, something to get their teeth into, something to remind them that it's all right, it'll be back, but in the meantime we'll try and find ever more interesting ways of entertaining you. But imagine I mean, sort of technology and the ills of technology are very well documented, and looking at screens all day and Zoom and all these things are much maligned, and with good reason. We've kind of, who knows how well we might all be able to communicate with each other when this is gone, or whether things actually stay online all the time. Yeah. But without it, without it all, it would have been dark, wouldn't it? It would have been very, very dark. Yeah. And be nicer to one another as well. I hope that I've kind of noticed generally that people are kind of taking a bit more interest, or looking out for one another a little bit more, so that that it's not been all bad, has it?
So what's next? Any more music in the pipeline for you?
What is happening? No, well, we've been working on some new material. I've got enough material now to do a third LP. We might get it down to 10. Might get it down to that C90 side. So yeah, I mean that's a constant. And then it's a case really of what happens with what happens in the winter with commentary gigs, whether or not I end up in the sunshine for a little while, which would be nice, before our season starts up again in April.
What is on the calendar in the new year?
England have got that big tour of India, which, again, the details are a little bit... Well, no, they're not thin on the ground. England have got 4 test matches, some one-dayers and T20s arranged for India tour over January, February. Obviously, there's a Sri Lanka trip as well to be sort of siphoned into that. Who knows when the South Africa, the 3 one-day internationals against South Africa will have to be rescheduled for, because that's all part of the Super League. That's right. For qualification for the 50 over World Cup in 23. So there's tons of stuff. There's cricket everywhere. The PSL again, because they finished it in October.
Yeah, that's February, isn't it? That's coming around again.
Yeah, it'll start again in February. IPL again in April. So yeah, the sun never sets on the cricket season anymore. That is for sure.
You got a favourite place that you like going to for commentating?
Anywhere will do. Brentwood's great. I mean, no, I don't know. I mean, it's all good. The South Africa trip was fantastic. All of these places are very different when you go as a broadcaster as opposed to
yeah, that's right.
Because you see stuff, you see things, you meet people, you get to have a lot more fun. You're not under lock and key quite as often as you were as a player, or at least they tried to keep us under lock and key anyway back in the old days. So yeah, I mean, everywhere's great. I vowed without sort of upsetting any of our myriad Bangladeshi listeners, I remember I vowed never to go back there again after touring there as a player.
Oh, really?
But then I've been back as a commentator since and had a great time. Really enjoyed it. And,
yeah.
Enjoyed the people and the the cuisine. The humidity can probably give it a rest every once in a while. But
Mozzies.
But other than that, it's all good. Right? It's difficult to complain about a gig where you sit and talk nonsense about cricket, as you two boys well know.